Greetings, mortals, and a capital day to you all. Today, I have with me a very special guest. Certified badass, military veteran, game developer, and one of the most well-researched medicists I know of. Present yourself, Bjorn McCormick.
Greetings. Glory to you, my friend. Thank you for the glorious introduction.
Great to have you.
Pleasure to be here.
Let's get into this. I'm actually gonna start with a topic you mentioned to me. I had no clue about this before, which is odd. Aducentin? Aducentin.
Adiacentin, yep.
Tell me about it.
So there isn't a lot to know, sadly, and it is something that I've tried to scrape around for information for, but it's essentially a mythological story about a city that was created by Hermes to foster piety among the residents, essentially. So there was, again, it's hard to find information about it that's verifiable. Everybody's got a kind of different story, but the story goes is that a city was built to foster the cosmic forces, or to capture cosmic forces using statues and decorations around the city, architecture, etc., to influence the behavior of its residents, again, to foster piety. Again, not a lot is known, not a lot is to be told, but that's the long and short of it. And I think we see echoes of this in society today with billboards and advertising and stuff of the like, which, promotes particular behavior, certainly not piety. But I think that it's quite clear that the Greeks and the Egyptians were well aware of these sorts of practices where you can use statues, images, paintings, etc., to capture the cosmic forces to influence people. You look at towering statues of the Greek gods, and it's hard not to be inspired or deflated. If you're making comparison, you might feel, oh wow, like it's quite humbling, or if you're looking at it from the other direction, quite inspiring. Big buff guys usually shown with humble phalluses, which is a symbol of piety, again, to show self-control and good behavior.
Colossus of Rhodes.
Yeah, exactly. So there's these towering figures that will serve as either inspiration or some form of guidance. And I believe that was the essence of this myth, this Adiacentin, this mythological city, which again was designed as an architectural marvel to capture the influence of the stars or the celestial bodies, embody them here on Earth, and then use that influence to promote particular behavior among the residents.
Yeah, I looked up some information, so I'll just add that. 4 towers rise at the cardinal points, each emitting a distinct celestial color. Red, the fire of will and transformation. Blue, the fluidity of thought and revelation. Green, the harmony of growth, and gold, the illumination of spirit and divine wisdom. So
beautiful. And, I believe there were four cardinal facing deity as well, anamorphized. You had a bull, I think a dog, an eagle, and there's another as well. And you see these in later alchemical depictions from the Renaissance period as well.
Yeah, winged serpents, griffins, and radiant sphinxes. Just ask ChatGPT about it. So from one magical city to another, what do you think about Hyperborea?
I haven't looked at it too deeply, to be honest. But all of these mythologies, I believe, are stemming from some kind of archetypal principle. Whether it was a previous time that actually once existed, or whether it was just some, hyperbole that someone created to try and bring about change. to me, they're both equally as important as each other. And whether it was myth or whether it was history, for me, is beside the point. It's about coming up with a concept and putting it into practice and seeing how it bears fruit, or what fruit it bears. So it's definitely a topic that I need to do more research into. I know there's kind of a relationship between these proto-historical civilizations like Atlantis and what was the other one? Agartha, the inner Earth. I know they're all related in some way in some way, shape, or form, whether it's just myth or whether it is genuinely some kind of, prehistorical history, or some kind of history that is just written into our DNA. It's there for a reason, and it doesn't seem to be going away.
You'll love my latest video. It's just released for our Patreons at the moment, so it's an early release. But it's coming out on Tuesday, and you're gonna love it. Secrets of the Knights Templar and the Sorcerer Kings, or something like that.
Awesome.
It's a good one.
Awesome.
It's about Hyperborean stuff. So when the Hyperboreans were said to be giants, and it connects to all that. And the word I was looking for when it comes to this tradition is the solar mysteries, because the polar solar mysteries. It always really comes back to that, because if you look at Sumerian artworks, one of the oldest symbols you can find in Sumeria is swastika, a bowl, which is it's a sun sign, and you also find the Templar cross, the sun soul. That's actually a solar symbol, like it's a solar cross. You find that in Akkadian, Babylonian, everything, and it connects all these. All the way back to Sumeria, and maybe Hyperborea, Atlantis, all that, through these solar mysteries. I'm not really sure what it means, but it has something to do with the Axis Mundi and the South, and the higher look like the northern setting of Hyperborea is about looking north towards, upwards with your aspirations and your view, instead of looking downwards like everybody else does. Money, 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 material gain.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of these ancient mythologies and mysticisms, etc., throughout time, in some way, shape, or form, are pointing to the celestial. It's pointing to the sky, right? Back then, that would have been a marvel. Looking up now, especially from here in Auckland, New Zealand, we've got tons of light pollution. You can barely see anything. It's not the marvel it would have been in the ancient world. And so you can kind of understand why so much time and so much credence would have been given to looking up and praising the sun and praising the gods of the heaven, which, as we know now from modern times, are the stars and the planets and the satellites, or the moons that revolve around them. But all of these ancient, from my perspective, having looked at a lot of them, they all seem to have their roots in celestial observations, and they take it one step further, astrologicalizing the majority of them, showing the relationship between the stars and the behaviors of people, right? So I've come to believe that the Greeks and the ancient Egyptians could look up and see not only a cluster of dots in the sky, but they saw an algorithm that they understood had a relationship with behaviors here on Earth. And, yeah, exactly. Some form of logos, that could be understandable by looking up and reading the spatial distances between certain bodies. Obviously the 7 luminaries were the most influential because they were probably the most observable, and with the naked eye and with the tech that they had back then, they were obviously the most prominent, so would have been believed to be the most influential. So I think they started mapping, exactly like you say, mapping these movements, these rotations, and these relationships out like a clock. And started to see patterns between particular arrangements and behavior down here on Earth, as above, so below, or thy will be done on Earth as it is in heaven. I think that's clear when you start to read these ancient texts, knowing about those relationships and knowing or believing that was how they saw it. The evidence becomes undeniable. It becomes very hard not to see the solar and celestial allegories written in the Bible or written in the Quran or written throughout Hindu texts like the Mahabharata and the Bhagavad Gita. So it becomes very evident to me that whether this is known by the majority of the practitioners that were actually practicing this at the time, it seems to be evident. Solar and celestial allegories littered all throughout. And I guess what my mission has become is to try and understand to what degree we have control over that influence. Are we merely the victims of cosmic play, or do we have degrees in which we can increase or decrease that influence?
Yeah, I think there's a fine line between free will and destiny.
I do too. I do too. And I have a feeling that consciousness or level thereof has a part to play in the degree of influence that they have over you. And for example, in demonology, they will tell you that as soon as you call the demon by its name, you're able to cast it out. And in my mind, that just means recognizing the forces that are influencing you, spotting them when they're starting to puppeteer you. Like in Buddhist traditions, you have meditative disciplines that require you to constantly monitor your thoughts. And as they arise, you label them or you don't label them, right? You can let them rise and you can say, okay, is this going to be a negative thought or a positive one? Is it one that I should let play out and influence me? Or should I swipe left right now before it builds momentum? So I think a big part of every spiritual discipline, for obvious reasons, is meditation and bringing it back to the breath, right? Which I think a lot of people already know that spirit and breath are synonymous in some way, shape, or form. And spirituality generally means some kind of like art of breathing or controlling the breath and experiencing fruit therein. Yeah.
Did you know that it was the Knights Templar who invented CPR? Because they read in the Bible that life starts at your first breath. So they tried introducing the breath.
True. I did not know that. You learn something every day. That's interesting, and yeah, wouldn't surprise me. Wouldn't surprise me at all for that to be the case.
And my friend Marcus Aurelius, great alchemist, he told me that people even materialists don't understand astrology. They don't believe in it, but every planet is sending out frequencies and is sending out light waves too. I mean, don't you feel different when the moon is out at night compared to when the...
But big time. Yeah. I for me, I can't deny it at all. It seems evident. And after having, spent so much time studying and researching and practicing Hermeticism and alchemy, it just seems like common sense to me. The ancient alchemists believe that all the metals that we have here today are precipitation of light from each celestial body, the sun being gold, Saturn being lead. Even if you look at the correspondence systems in these old cosmologies where, Saturn is the adversary, you can kind of see where that could come from through modern day cosmology. Saturn's gravity would be subtly pulling us away from the sun or trying to, whereas the sun is slowly, drawing everything into its center, so you can kind of see that even in modern cosmology, those same archetypal influences are there. The sun, returning to the Son of God is the way to heaven, bringing yourself back to the sun. And we all know life could not exist here on earth without the sun, right? Everything requires the sun to live. Plants need water and sunlight, the fruit of the vine, water to wine. So I think that there's space for a modern cosmology to reemerge from all of the, from a culmination of these ancient traditions. And you could see that with Hermeticism, is that's what they were trying to do. It was clearly a syncretic tradition that was seeking all of the wisdom from what they believed to be the world at that time. And bringing it all together in an alchemical process to, calcify what didn't need to be there, dissolve everything that they wanted to remove, separate the pure from the impure, and then recombine it and separate it again. And they were practicing alchemy with spirit, essentially, and with these magical traditions. And I think that that's what we're supposed to be doing, is constantly, if you look at the way that that cosmos and nature works, it's a constant refinement and a changing process. Nothing stays fixed and remains still, except perhaps God, which was complete
mover.
Exactly. And everything else that is born of that is experimenting with the components of it, and it's constantly moving, it's constantly changing. And I think we're supposed to be playing a part in that, separating, taking what's already known, separating out what we think doesn't serve us anymore, and recombining it and redistilling it, and letting it ferment and testing it and seeing how it fruits, and then bringing it together into a complete whole. I truly believe that what we're supposed to be doing. But we see more and more with the advent of social media and stuff, people are being funneled into one way of thinking. Or one way of being, and you can't get out of this tradition or the whole thing falls apart. It's like, well, does it? Like, have you tested? Have you measured? Have you checked? I'm not saying go back and rip things apart and kind of spoil the beautiful foundations that these people came before us built. I'm just saying that there is tons of nectar back there that will be timeless and work forever. And there's also tons built in that was not timeless, that arose out of necessity of the time, and again, time changes and we're in different times, and different times do require different solutions.
Yeah, returning to archetypes and astronomy and stuff. I mean, an early astronomer was Copernicus. I mean, a lot of stuff is based on that, the early stuff. And they actually analyzed his notebooks now, and they found he was doing alchemy. They found like mercury and
the pseudoscience of alchemy, they like to call it. Yet our greatest philosophers have spent massive chunks of their life obsessed with it. It's funny.
And I mean, I might even be greater than Copernicus here, because he had this theory that the heavens reflected the Bible. So according to him, the sun was the father, the planets were like Jesus, and the intermediate space was the Holy Spirit. Which, I don't know, to me doesn't really make sense. But the sun being the father, I mean, that's everywhere. That's every religion. But if you travel from Earth towards the sun, the first planet you meet is Venus, which represents the body, the emotions, the heart. And then when you could continue onwards, you meet Mercury. Yeah, the spirit, the mind, which connects you to the sun, soul. So I don't know how that happens. It's freaky.
I'm sure there's no reason. I'm sure there's a good reason why they call Christ the Son. Like that's how I see it. I see Christ, or the symbol thereof, as the perfect embodied human. Like the human that was closest to the Father. And I think I don't necessarily see the Son as the Father. It's more like a microcosmic representative representation of the Father's essence, So
yeah, of course.
There's levels of purity, obviously, that ascend throughout the star systems in the cosmos, and I'm not sure that our solar system, is close to the Father at all. You know what I mean? Like,
there's something interesting about that. There's something called the axis of evil in cosmology, and they traced like background radiation like from different places, and they found that, and this is freaky, and they haven't been able to disprove it. They found that the center of the universe, according to their readings with background data, is the space between the sun and the earth.
Wow, that's interesting. That's really interesting, isn't it? Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, strange, but also very interesting.
I haven't been able to disprove it, but it's up there.
Yeah, I definitely see merit in personifying the planets, especially if they do in fact have the level of influence over human behavior as the ancients used to believe, and build their civilizations around believing that they do. Whether it's a hierarchy that is supposed to be kind of ascended, or whether you're supposed to integrate little bits of each in and balance them, who knows? But I think it's definitely a practice worth exploring. And ever since yes, indeed. And ever since I've been practicing it, I can say that everything in my life has increased in quality. Everything, especially my work ethic. And some people will say, the Buddhist in me says that's terrible. Like like if you're motivated to be productive,
profane.
Like you're yes, exactly. You've been corrupted by the demons or whatever. But I mean, it really depends where you sit and what your goals and what your intentions are, right? Like, and what the fruit of the intentions are too. Yeah, it's tricky, man. We're in a world that's full of conflicting information, and I do believe that we're responsible for formulating our own perspective, and I believe that that's what the powers want. They want, dare I say, diversity. And when I say diversity, I don't mean for you to support a selected class of protected people. I mean genuine diversity, where you are contributing something unique to the world in hopes to make it more beautiful or to refine it,
I think the most important thing, we need to see the distinctions between satisfaction and pleasure, because everybody is seeking pleasure, and that's momentary, it's over. Satisfaction is when, like, doing stuff like this, writing, recording, all that game developing. It satisfies you on a deeper level, like soul-wise.
Well said. And I think it's quite easy to make the distinction. Usually satisfaction, at least for me, comes from hard work and some form of struggle. Whereas pleasure, there's not typically any struggle involved whatsoever. Yeah, you know what I mean?
Hey, having sex is a lot of work. It burns a lot of calories.
Certainly. Well, I mean, it can be a struggle, I guess, if you're not prepared for it. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't call it suffering to bear the fruit. It's pretty damn enjoyable all the way through, regardless of how you perform. So
yeah. So let's move on to my second topic. Or third or something. What about giants? You believe they existed?
I think there's lots. I think it's an interesting concept. I honestly don't know. I'm open to the possibility that they existed. I see no reason why they couldn't. How can we accept the concept of dinosaurs but not giants? I mean, if there was a time in the history of Earth where oxygen was so plentiful that everything just grew to 20 times, 100 times the size, why not? Looking at all the ancient texts, it certainly seems that they believed that there was giants, and they believed that they obviously had some kind of interaction and involvement with man, like you said, with Hyperborea. Obviously, that believe you told me the giants were the protectors of men in that mythology. They stood up for man and against the fallen angels or whatever it was. Then you've obviously got the Nephilim, who were like embodied demons that were wandering the earth, or depending on I guess it depends
not from
on
my
what,
research. The video I released, I'm kind of disproving that. Like Timothy Hogan, I had him on. We discussed this, and he said his name Hogan means of Og, or descendant of Og, the giant. 11 cubits tall bed and everything. So I think this is why I'm releasing the video, and I think it's so important, is that the whole history of the giants and the demons, fallen angels, whatever, has been written by Yahwist worshippers. I mean, Satan worshippers. So of course they're gonna hate the giants. I mean, but when you look at all the fantastic Cyclopean architecture you find, Machu Picchu, the pyramids, everywhere. It was called Cyclopean because the Greeks thought giants built it, and I think so too.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's like hieroglyphics that would, testify to that fact in both ways, in both directions. What do you think about the? Sorry for switching the questioning up, but what would your thoughts be in terms of like the biblical accounts and the Sumerian accounts where the giants were a result of kind of failed genetic experiments on man trying to produce the perfect human?
I don't know if that's not really what the Bible says. It says like the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful.
Correct. Yeah.
And they came in onto them.
Intermingled with them, right?
Do you know the word they used there? Beautiful. The word we translate as beautiful. It's tobot.
Like comely. Yeah.
Tobot. And that's the same word that is used in Genesis when the first created the first day, and it was good. He saw the light, and it was good. Tobot. It's the same word they're using. So even there, it's implying that these women were, if they married them voluntarily, they were good at least.
So do you believe that who were they then? The sons of God in relationship to humans? Like, would they have been able to just come down and breed with humans? Is that what you're saying? Is that it was just breeding? But is this interspecies breeding? Or what kind of breeding is that? Because then if you look at some of the Gnostic texts, right, in the apocryphal literature, you have clear not clear, but you have symbolic metaphor for intermingling, right? Where, for example, the first humans weren't animate, right? They couldn't get them to animate. They could create the bodies, but they were unable to kind of reproduce the spirit. So they had to, experiment essentially until the lives became animate. That to me kind of resonates with the, genetic experimenting, or like a kind of another form of creation myth that you hear echoed in some of these modern interpretations of the Sumerian mythology, where the fallen angels or the Anunnaki or whatever you want to call them intermingled with men, and played with our DNA to create a kind of hybrid species. What are your thoughts there?
I mean, if you read the Sumerian accounts, you have, for instance, the story of Gilgamesh, which is the oldest story we have of giants. He was he 15 cubits or something? He was 5 meters tall, and his mother was a goddess, and his father was like 2/3 god or something, and he was a tyrant, a real bad guy and stuff. But then the gods sent Enkidu to show him what's what, make him humble.
The Bushman.
Yeah. And then he became a hero. I mean, Gilgamesh is known as a hero in history. So it wasn't, I don't know where this idea of fallen angels, that's from like the book of Enoch, which is so questionable. It contradicts a lot of stuff from the rest of the canonical Bible, which I kind of discounted. I mean, there's valuable information for sure in it, but you got to know the perspective. And they found the tomb of Gilgamesh. They believe they found it in like 2008. The BBC reported that they found the tomb of Gilgamesh. but they said, "Oh, we're not gonna open it up because of grave robbers, so we can't open it up."
Mm-hmm.
And like a week later, the Iraq War started. I don't think that body's left.
Do you believe that at any point in our ancient history, or in the let's say last 5,000 years, that humans tried to experiment with altering the genome? And I just reference examples with like hybrid creatures that you find throughout mythologies throughout the world. Do you think that is simply some kind of symbolic representation, or do you think that maybe there was a time where they were experimenting with crossbreeding, cross species, and all of that sort of thing?
Well, the way I look at it, I know that DNA is fractal and holographic, and it's like somatic too, a lot of stuff. So I think these celestial beings, I don't think they're aliens the way we think about it. They're more interdimensional kind of woo stuff. I think they like reprogrammed the DNA at like a basic crystallized level, like not the way we think about it, but like the blueprint. They took the astral, they changed the astral, which formed the material. I think that's how they were.
Do you think that process was like incorporated into the manufacturing of the giants, is what I'm saying? Or do you think that the giants was more akin to what our natural form would have been back then, and we are the result of the engineering?
I think the gods were very horny creatures. You find that all over Greek mythology, and I think they slept with. I think they banged the human chicks and created.
Yeah, and it worked. It just worked because they were.
They're shapeshifter gods, so they can look. If you read the Bible with the Sodom and Gomorrah and stuff, they come as humans, beautiful humans, so they can appear human and they can eat food and everything else. So of course they can get it on. So.
Okay.
And I don't think it was sinful. I don't think it was bad that they did. The one who wiped the clean slate, the slate clean, was Enlil in Sumerian. The bad guy, Yahweh in the Bible, and these are not good characters. They don't like the giants. And if you read, if you read Deuteronomy 3, talks about how they attacked Og, king of Bashan, and 60 fortified cities, and they killed everybody, men, women, and children, and they stole all their stuff and burned their cities down, and they're like gloating about it.
Noisy humans. The noisy humans.
No, these were the Israelites that did it. That killed the king of Bashan. The Israelites. And who attacks who in these stories? They send out spies to look at spy out the land of Canaan. It's a land that floweth with milk and honey, so like a paradise. And it's like, that's ours. We're gonna get that with violence. It's never the giants attacking them. If you read the stories, it's always them attacking the giants and then genociding them. I feel like there's some kind of genocide. What's that country right now that's committing a genocide? Somewhere there in the Middle East. I feel like this is repeating it. So, old habits die hard, I guess. They're not, not that they're even connected to those ancient Israelites, but whatever.
I look at humans as a byproduct of nature, and I think nature is innately violent everywhere you look. Like Buddha noticed this really early on, and it was one of the seeds to his enlightenment, was noticing that the bird has to eat the worm to survive, the cat has to eat the bird, the dog eats the cat, and it's just this big cycle of violence. And is there a higher way? Yeah, maybe, sure, but we've come through.
Will lie down with the lamb. And they will eat.
Yeah, sure. That's a beautiful. It's a beautiful unity of opposites, right? Like as when the man and the woman come together, when like the devil can shake hands with Jesus, and I guess that's that power in that story, is that Jesus was willing to love the person that was killing him while he was killing him, and he was even willing to heal that person who delivered, the killing blow, let's say. So there's obviously in that story, it's clearly saying there's a higher way, but we do have to remember that we came through that. And we would have seen success in that for a very long time, before we met someone like Jesus, who kind of said, nah, like everything that you see happening is the opposite of how you're supposed to be doing it,
The law of the jungle is man's law, sadly.
Yeah, I mean, it is, yeah, for sure, it is now.
Rules.
But I think that, yeah, it takes. You can't just flip a coin and expect someone to arrive at this kind of enlightened perspective. Let's say, I think you have to have endured the crucible and found yourself in a cave so dark that the only solution from there is light. And sadly, I see us in a time where people are basically being told that suffering is not good for them, and that they should be taking the path of least resistance, and that if there's any struggle involved, it's potentially the wrong path. Which to me is very troubling, because as a former soldier, I experienced the most. I experienced the most personal growth in the trenches, so to speak, like in the darkness, in the mud, alone. That's where you break and can be rebuilt, but if society, or if this new world is proposing some, future utopia where working is going to be no longer mandatory for your well-being, I can't imagine that being a good thing personally, because the more you suffer, the more you grow. That is a fact. For me, that is a fact. Whether you're in the gym and you're putting stress on your body, it becomes stronger, it adapts. It's the absence of the suffering that lets the light in, I think. But with the suffering, there's just what? Without the suffering, what is there? It's like
I don't think we're supposed to meant to suffer. I think suffering is a catalyst for growth, as you said.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, the Native Americans have stories that back in the day, way back in the day, primordial times, we used to speak the language of the animals, and they understood us, and so forth. I believe that's quite possible. I even think like dogs they probably know more words than we imagine, and like the resonance we give off and everything. I think animals are a lot more perceptive than we think.
Definitely. And cats as well, man. Like cats know when you're feeling bad, and they'll come in and they'll sit on your heart chakra, bro, and try and change your resonance. And the dolphins as well, you can feel a very resonant connection when you're around those creatures. It's like they read your minds, bro. They can read our minds or something. I wanted to just take you back though to the dependence of joy and suffering, like kind of being this kind of yin and yang relationship. So there's this concept in Tibetan Buddhism called it's interdependent origination, where each opposite is derived from its opposite. Like its existence is derived from its opposite. And without its opposite, its own identity can't exist per se, right? So without like sadness, happiness then becomes very difficult to define. If happiness was all there was, we'd just be in a state of and you can see this with people that don't work. They get more and more miserable because they're looking for something that can't exist without its opposite, and so it's taken me a while to formulate and really solidify this opinion to where it's very clear cut in my mind. But it's like we've all heard the quote, like no pain, no gain. Like it's definitely true. And I first noticed this in yes, yeah, that too. And I first noticed this in its most pure form again in the infantry, where you're waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning and you are working right up until 11 o'clock at night, right? Non-stop hard physical labor. And, they don't give a how you feel about it. You just have to do it, right? And then when you get to 11 o'clock, you've got maybe 10 or 15 minutes to yourself before you sleep. And you don't want to do anything but sit in the bliss of doing nothing, because you have worked for however many hours straight, like sacrificing every minute, every bone, every muscle in your body. In those last 15 minutes, there's nothing more pleasurable than doing nothing. You know what I mean? And if you were to go up and ask someone who is not working, hey, what's your favorite thing to do? They're not going to tell you doing nothing. You know, they're going to tell you the thing that's the most stimulating. But if you asked a soldier, what's the best part of the day? What's the most celebrated? It's that 15 minutes at the end where I don't have to do anything. You know, like, and it's true. And I think it's what does Hermes says, by virtue of contrast, all things are born. You know, like, so it's the forms are infinite because of the difference between the experience and contrast, right? Here's an example. Give me one. Give me one. I'll give you one more example. So if your body is boiling hot, let's say you've just finished a workout and your body is boiling hot, you're inviting that cold shower or that ice plunge, right? You're like, yes, bring it on. Like, give me the cold. But if you wake up and you're cold, the last thing that you want to do is have a cold shower. Right? Exactly the same experience, but different by virtue of contrast. And this is what I mean about, like, you really experience joy when you voluntarily suffer. You know, there's something about that willingness to struggle, willingness to suffer, willingness to bear the cross, let's say, that makes it all the more rewarding once you're on the other side of it. When it's finally absent, then joy will arise and its infinite grandeur.
Yeah, well, people have this misconception that they don't like working. What they don't like is our slave system, tax slave system, working like cubicles and stuff. I mean, having a farm and providing with your hands for your family, it's rewarding to work with your hands.
Beautiful thing.
So that's the misconception there. But when it comes to duality, I mean, to have reality, you need duality.
Yeah, I agree, for sure.
You have black and you have white.
Yes, we have the checkerboard.
Yes, but the thing is, reality isn't black and white. It's a grayscale, and that grayscale you can be really dark, like our current slave system, or you can be more on the lighter side of gray. So you have that spectrum. So it's not black or white. So you still have suffering. You just have less of it, and you have more satisfaction and more, you know, I mean, what is the whole city of, what do you call it?
Adiocenten. Yeah.
Adiocenten. I mean, that whole thing is about balancing this stuff, so.
Yeah, correct. And I think what the Buddha would say in terms of the light and dark is you want to avoid both. You want to basically sit perfectly in the middle, where the pendulum isn't going to be violently swinging between one or the other, because it's like that cyclic thing, you know, like strong. What is it? Like easy times grow grows weak men, and hard times grow strong men. It's like that pendulum swing. The more time you spend pursuing pleasure, right, the more it's going to swing back in the absence of pleasure, to show you that contrast, right, which is now it's gone, now I'm coming down, now I feel sad, you know. And likewise, you can play it the other way. Like, you can lean into the darkness and expect a big flood of light to come back. But Buddha's thing was all about avoiding the extremes and just keeping the pendulum perfectly still, basically, where it could sit in the middle, and you could be a butter lamp unwavering in the wind, you know, like sit there perfectly. And I look at that teaching kind of from a social and political perspective too. If you're perfectly poised in the middle, if your argument requires you to like lean left or lean right, you're in the right. You can look at this from a boxing perspective too. Like, if you're all the way one way, how much effort is it to go all the way back to the other when the time calls for it, right? But if you're poised in the middle, right, whatever the situation requires, whether it's to call upon the demons and go into the dark, or call into the angels and go into the light, you're ready to quickly move to either side. Whereas if you're polarized one way, if the here and the now, or the thou and the there and the then requires you to go to the opposite side, I don't know how easy it is to go from pure darkness to pure light. I think it's a process. It'll definitely happen. But yeah, I see the merit in staying kind of center.
It reminds me of a libertarian. There's a Murray Rothbard quote about if you've been called a hippie, a conservative, and everything, a neocon, and all this stuff in a day, a liberal, and everything, then you're probably a libertarian.
Yeah, yeah, you're perfectly poised. That's funny.
Yeah. You want to move on? I just ask. I have no clue what your opinion or your views, or even if you know about these topics. But I always like to ask people about crypto.
Throw them at me, bro. I'm always keen to learn.
What do you know about Dogman? Have you heard of that?
Dogman.
Yeah. And you haven't heard of it?
Is it some animal-human hybrid guy, or is it a spirit that takes two forms?
We have no clue. It looks like a werewolf, like a movie werewolf.
We all as I can speak to that is that when we had this myth of a guy called Goat Man in the army, in the infantry, and some of the guys who were, I immediately, my mind goes to Pan, right? We had, exactly. We would have sights and reportings from soldiers that would get lost out in Waiouru on the desert road. It's basically just undulating fields of tussock that stretch for miles. We'd get reports from soldiers that would see when they're lost doing their navigation tests, random goat man on the side of the road who would offer guidance and offer means of, I guess, salvation from their problems. It offered directions, but most people were afraid to confront him for obvious reasons. So that's the closest that I can speak from my own personal experience.
Well, you didn't know about Dogman, but I'm sure you've heard of Bigfoot. When I had my grandmaster on here last time, I just popped the question. I just wanted to know. He's like, there was this one time I got chased by a Bigfoot. I was like, what?
I can say, and my mother can attest to this, is that I've had one experience where I was like, I think I saw a Bigfoot. We've got a local mountain just across the road from where we are called Pigeon Mountain. It's not big by any means, but it's got a real nice track. And as you get to the summit, there's kind of this canopy where the birds hang out. So there's quite a few trees. And I was walking up there one night, admittedly, not 100% sober, and came into the canopy, which you usually hear full of birds, but on this occasion it was dead silent. And so I was thinking, where are the birds? Usually, regardless of the time, that you can hear rustling and stuff. And so there was no sound. And then I saw a single tree, like in my periphery, rustling. And I'm just like, my attention is drawn. And what I thought I saw, I don't know if I can share on here, but it looks like the silhouette of a guy or like a big hairy dude jerking off in a tree. And I was just like, okay, I don't know what the deal with that is. So I kind of went around to get another angle in case it was like, some pervert and there was maybe some people on the other side. Yeah. But then when I tried to get another angle, it was gone. Like I couldn't find anyone there. So I was like, what the was that? Like, did I just see a Bigfoot? And I ended up going home and telling Mum and being like, Mum, I think I saw a Bigfoot years ago. But yeah, that's the only encounter. But I've recently, I've done a little bit of research, heard a lot of mixed things like, oh yeah, Bigfoot are basically the evolutionary end game of what humans would have been without the Sumerian intermingling. And then I've heard there are interdimensional species that are trying to communicate with us, and that they helping to awaken us from their home planet or whatever. I don't know what to think about it, bro. I've got no idea.
In Sweden, we, they call it like trolls, and they're like these ugly creatures
live under a bridge. Yeah.
That's not the original meaning of the word. Troll means that's the Swedish word for magic is trollkonst, the art of the trolls. So and trolls just meant things like fairies, tomte, like Santa's little helpers, elves and stuff. Yeah. that's what troll means. It doesn't mean, and I think Bigfoot definitely fits into that category, like the wild man. So
yeah, yeah, why not? Like, I think that there's a lot of species that have come and gone. I think there are a lot of entities that are only visible with the mind, like that you can only discover with a third eye open. I think that you can have all sorts of experience of the meta and non-physical. So why not? Like, all of these stories have come from somewhere, like, and if you've ever taken psychedelics, you've definitely had an experience with one of these, non-physical entities, and they seem to take on a consciousness of their own. They seem like they're altered from the rest of your own, personality. They seem to be external in nature. So who knows? Maybe they're just fractal archetypes somewhere hiding away in the subconscious, waiting for the right conditions to reveal themselves. I don't know. Like, until one wakes me up in the middle of the night and does all my homework for me, they'll stay in the realm of possibility, like all things. I think everything's possible, but it's hard to render a firm opinion on something that you haven't, experienced in your life.
I think when I was 13, 14, I saw a ghost. So hearing people say they see Dogman, fairies, and Bigfoot, I don't doubt them. I think they're being honest.
Sorry, carry on.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, I can completely relate with the paranormal phenomena. I've heard things and had dreams about things since I was a little boy. And my ex-wife clearly saw ghosts. It was very obvious. And I even was lucky enough to experience a collective hallucination at her dinner table where both her and her mother saw something at the exact same time. Whether they, like, it would have had to be a very highly orchestrated routine, which would have been very out of their character to have been otherwise. But I saw them both be startled, both look in the same direction, and then look at each other kind of shocked and, like heart fluttering. And it was quite clear that they both saw the same thing. No one else saw it, but they did, so I've got no reason to doubt that sort of stuff. I've seen it play out in my own life experience.
High strangeness. You have the Skinwalker Ranch now. There's also a documentary called Beyond Skinwalker Ranch, which is another ranch that's like high strangeness. You have military involved in this, like intelligence agencies, everything.
Millions of dollars, right, going into it. So
exactly. And I think the aliens, they call them aliens. I don't think they're aliens the way we think about it. I think the aliens and Bigfoot have a lot more in common than we think.
Very, very, very possible. I got exposed to some interesting stuff. I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about it, but I will anyway. It's surely the statute of limitations is far gone now, and everything's changed so much. I'm sure it's okay. But when we were in barracks, and this was about 2011, I would have been in my mid-20s. I'm 40 now. But we were talking about the NCOs. I was in the infantry, and they were telling us about, like encounters that they'd have late at night in the barracks, and that, a lot of people have had some pretty horrific experiences. Some people had lost their lives in there, for mental health reasons, essentially. And spirits would be seen all the time. Like, it was not uncommon, and we'd get briefed about it and, stay away from them. Like, they can harm you mentally. And it was quite clear to me that there was like a spiritual component to the training. Like we had kind of an alchemical wedding of European or British military doctrine, as well as Māori military doctrine. And I don't know if you know much about the Māori, but they're a very, very spiritually grounded people. And so kapa haka, which is, I guess, a form of invocation of spirit. Anybody who has ever seen a haka before a sports game, if you're in the presence of that, it might look silly to see online on a video, but if you're in the presence of that at a game or in real, like just in its physical location, you will feel it. You will feel that they are doing something. And that was fully integrated into the training. You know, we would be invoking the god of war, Ngāti Tūmā Taonga, every single day, you know, in some way, shape or form. And we'd spend hours doing it every week, you know. So it was clear that there was spiritual components integrated. And they even had in the signals platoon in the New Zealand infantry, right up until I think the late 90s, they had Mercury on the beret. You know, so Mercury was the signaler, the symbol for the signaler, and we even had a nickname for him. You know, they called him Jimmy, and Jimmy was the voice that you would hear over the radio if you were ever lost alone in the wilderness and couldn't connect with any of your soldiers. He would be the voice that would come through to offer guidance. You know, so it was quite clear that there was not only sorry,
phenomena. Third man.
Yes. So it was very clear that there was this kind of integration of not only kind of spiritual Masonic lore in these military disciplines, but Māori spirit science as well, fully integrated. And again, I mean, you called me a military veteran. I wouldn't go that far because I didn't serve a long time, but the amount of growth that was experienced in the few years that I did equals 15 years in the civilian world easily. You know what I mean? To 2 to 3 years of dedicated training, more personal growth than 10 to 15 in the civilian sphere. You know, and when I came out, it was like the world was inverted, bro. Everything is the opposite when you're being trained as a soldier. You know, you get told stuff like, if it looks good, it probably is. You don't hear book by its cover. You hear, if it looks good, it probably is. And you know, it's all of these mantras about leaning into the struggle as opposed to running away from it out here, or at least that's been my experience. Maybe it's just because where I am, you know, in New Zealand. But
I mean, when I said veteran, that's just a word you use for somebody who used to be in the military.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I'll take that. I'll be a veteran.
Yeah. So there, when you look at the one of the most famous medals of honor in the world is the Medal of Honor, of course. And if you look at it, it's Eastern Star or a reverse pentagram, which is interesting. I heard Mark Passio. I don't believe him, but it's kind of clever that you know, the elites, the satanic elites that control everything, that they put that there as a reverse pentagram to mock the military, and that's why the military have dog tags, because they're dogs. I don't believe that, but it's an interesting theory.
Yeah, maybe. Who knows? I can definitely attest to the fact that everything that they do has some kind of symbolic relevance, you know. And there was I didn't realize it at the time until quite some years later, actually. But there's a lot of Masonic influence in there that comes from the pharaohs in military training. You know, left foot by the left foot forward. All sorts of things, bro, which, you know, didn't really arise in my mind until many, many, many years later. But it's, man, I'll never forget it, because I learned so much in there, and I didn't know why I grew so much, you know, until many years later. And then studying all these kind of empowerment traditions, you're like, oh, wow, like the military has basically just taken all of them and rolled it up into a pill that anybody can swallow. And you don't even know that you're swallowing it. That's the amazing thing about it. So, yeah.
The thing about the military, which I love about the military, is you learn to have a very practical mindset about everything. Like, you meet an obstacle. You don't like, fuck. You're like, oh, how am I getting over this? This, step. Practical knowledge. And I heard Graham Hancock, no, it was Rupert Sheldrake, who talked about the SAS. They're trained, not, if you're sneaking up on somebody, they're trained not to look directly at their back, because they're due to turn around and look, because they can feel eyes on them.
Correct.
And they don't believe in the supernatural, or it's not in the military doctrine to believe in that. But it's practical. It works. It's practical knowledge. That's why they apply it. So.
Yeah, there was never any forthcoming information about the spiritual nature of what we were doing. There were only, as I say, hints like, oh yeah, his name is Jimmy, and they were clearly referring to Hermes or Pan when they were talking about the goat man. And there was never a, hey, we're learning to invoke the spirits now. But it's pretty obvious when you're bashing your chest and smashing your legs and like calling upon the god of war by his name in Māori, that it's an invocation, like that you're doing some kind of spiritual invocation. And all you need to do is look at the faces of the soldiers or any practitioner of haka when they're doing some of these routines. Is you can see the fierceness in their eyes. You can see it consume their face. And the really good ones, you can see them become possessed by whatever ancestor spirit they're trying to call upon. So, but again, there's no like forthcoming admissions as to that's what you're doing. It became apparent to me later.
I mean, Morse, like they look at, like, the ancient Romans had Morse as a main war god. I mean, I believe they believed it was supernatural and everything, but Morse represents the battle frenzy. When you're like in the battle frenzy, that's the Morse activating in you. So all these gods and stuff, it's kind of theurgy on the battlefield. Like Morse you're becoming Morse.
Yeah, and I think that all of them have their time under the stars, let's say. There's some situations in which calling upon what would traditionally be considered as like an evil force will be essential for your survival in certain circumstances. And whether you want to take the way of Christ and just surrender your life, or call upon the demon and secure your life, is your call, right? But if you're not familiar with how to do either, well, then you're just going to succumb to your animal instincts in that moment. You know what I mean? Like if someone breaks into your house and says, "I'm here to kill you and your family," do you want to take the prescribed angelic pathway and say, "I love you, brother, take what you want," like, I forgive you? Or do you want to call upon the demon that's necessary to ensure the survival of your entire progeny? Are you using
the word demon here or daemon?
Well, to me, they're synonymous. Like a force that is basically the rage that you would need to overcome a murderer. You're not going to get there piously. The only pious thing to do there is to surrender to whatever the other person's will is and be like, "I forgive you." I don't think there's a noble or angelic way of murdering someone who's there to kill your entire family. I think that you need to meet him on the battlegrounds that he's in and essentially call upon more of the spirits that he has, and I don't know. I think that if you are going to be humble in that situation, there's a good chance that your entire family just gets taken out.
Sell your cloak and buy a sword if you don't have one.
Yeah, well, I mean, or is it just turn the other cheek or give them the rest of your garments, like Christ says? And how do you?
It depends. It depends on the context. I'm guessing.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. Like, I think that's one of the things that I struggled with with the Bible, where there were some scenarios that are highly possible, depending on what kind of environment you're in, that just aren't covered off, and. I don't know, like if you were to ask your pastor, if you were confronted with that issue where there was a man holding a knife ready to kill your entire family, like, would you get down on your knees and surrender and let him have his way with like you and your family? Or would you call upon the strength of something that you needed to disarm and dismantle and dispose of it?
It's interesting you mentioned this, because to the Romans, Morse wasn't just a war god to just fucking kill people and stuff. He was a protector of boundaries, protector of women. I mean, he is an angel. Morse is an angel. I mean, in Kabbalah, all the planets are associated with an angel. And so it's just the same thing. You're being angelic by embodying Morse, the protector, in that situation.
Yeah. I mean, maybe I see all of them as having negative and positive aspects, just like us, or that's how we would kind of, the human would attribute them, right? As you've got strength, courage, and will that is being kind of emanated from Mars, and strength is great when it's executed in the right way, but it can be executed in the wrong way too, So it's. Yeah, that is a tough topic, like, and that was something that I really struggled with throughout kind of my spiritual journey, was like understanding how to deal with threat in an angelic way, because there's rashness, there's fear, and there's aggression too, like, which traditionally considered negative attributes of Mars, or of the Lord of War, if you will, or the Archon of Iron, however you want to refer to them. But it's like, what is a positive application of rashness, and what is a positive application of aggression, and how, like, what is the percentage of your Earth experience that actually requires you to execute rashness, aggression, and violence? And I think this is where the negative and the positive attributions come from, is that 9 times out of 10, aggression, rashness, and violence probably isn't the answer. But 1 time out of 10, it's the only solution.
I mean, if we're to believe that Jesus is from heaven, I think it's Michael, and I think I approve of that. But whatever. There's a war in heaven. They fight. They defeat Satan. So obviously they aren't opposed to violence in the proper use of it, applied correctly.
Well, that's it, the proper use. And then how do you discern that? Like, if you're then told, violence is an angelic attribute. I mean, I see everything.
Justice is a
angelic correct. But then how do you determine what is just justice? Like, and I think this is why some of these things have got negative attributions, is because it's not as easy to discern when an appropriate use of violence is compared to, say, an appropriate use of love, which is something that you can get away with far more commonly and more regularly than violence, right? I'm not saying there is. I am one person who has seen violence have very positive effects, on people. Again, drawing back to the military, we had this one really young, talented guy. I won't name his name. He was a young Māori fella, super talented physically and very smart, but had a chip on his shoulder, had like an ego problem, thought he was the best at everything, right? And that was preventing him from taking on wisdom from the NCOs, taking on teaching and instruction from people around him. And then correct. And then one day, this little hot-headed Niuean boy, who I remember to this day is the strongest little fiery ball I've ever seen in my life. He was one of the smallest dudes in the platoon. Just one left hook and dropped this guy, right? And it was violent, but it was a correct application of violence. And the young fella stood up, a changed man, chip on his shoulder, gone. Straight to the top, started learning everything, up for SAS selection, all of that sort of stuff, So it was like, I've seen positive application of what people would say, violence is never okay. In that situation, it was the prescription, it was the remedy, So yeah, it's a tricky one.
In the Bible, where Peter, like, they come to arrest Jesus, and he draws his sword and like cuts off his ear or something, Jesus says, "Put away your sword." He doesn't say, "Throw away your sword." He said, "Put it back in the sheath. You might need it for other things."
Yes, exactly. And it's the whole thing about, if you're capable of wielding, but also capable of sheathing, that is true control and true power. If you're not capable of wielding and it's always sheathed, what is that? It's just false virtue, right? One story that I could never quite understand, and I was wondering if it had something to do with fertility, was the story in the Bible about where Jesus looks upon the plant that's not bearing fruit and is like, "Why is there no fruit on this tree?" And he like destroys the tree. Are you familiar with this?
Yeah, I know, but bad trees produce bad fruits.
Yeah, so Yeah, I mean, this tree produced no fruit, and Jesus seemed salty about that. And I was wondering if there was any correspondence between that and the kind of Hermetic idea that, like to not, this was written about in the corpus, that not producing, not creative, not engaging in the creative act as God has willed us to. Obviously the
Be
Father is
fruitful
a
and
creator.
multiply.
Correct. Like, and Hermes says that it is a great sin, essentially a grave sin, not to reproduce, and that if you don't bear children, there's a chance that you're going to have a body in the next life that's neither man nor woman, right? Which is an interesting proposition. If you consider some of the new, shall we say, cultural / identity states that we're seeing on the rise today.
Well,
I mean,
Talmud.
I mean, maybe maybe. So yeah, I mean, what do you think about that? Do you think there's a correspondence between him being angry at the plant for not bearing fruit and Hermes kind of condemning people for not engaging in the creative act? Or because I never understood that, like, why, what did the tree do, bro? Like, was it out of season? Are you just angry because there was no fruit on it and you wanted some? Like, what was the deal? I want to know what the moral takeaway.
It's probably something about the tree being sterile, but I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Ask me to understand the whole Bible.
Yeah, I just wanted to know if you had any insights into that one passage while it entered my mind.
By the way, my zodiac sign, my sun sign, is Aries, God of War. And the two things that Aries values the most is justice and proper action. That's coming back to that proper action. So
interesting.
God of War embodies proper action, violence used correctly, proper action. I mean, I'm a Knights Templar, Knights Templar page, and I mean it was a warrior monk society or order, so we aren't opposed. I mean, we're the bearers of the solar mysteries, the protectors of Christendom, whatever. So we're not opposed to violence, but we use it sparingly, very sparingly, mostly for defense. So
I feel a very strong connection to the Templars, and I'm almost certain that in lives previous I would have been one, probably multiple lives. And there was a message that kind of came to me semi-recently in the last decade, as to the ultimate reasoning behind my incarnation. Like I believe that I probably have served many lives in the service to God, however, fighting potentially unjustly, and in this realm or in this reincarnation, the message seems to have been, okay, Mr. Holy Saint Warrior Monk, what are you going to do and how are you going to proceed when you're surrounded by heathens? Like, are you going to go and kill everybody? You know what I mean? And so this life is almost like a repentance or a forgiveness for all of the lives that I've had previously where I've killed in the name of unjustly.
Yeah, I've got no clue if I have a past history with the Templars, but I definitely feel drawn to like Egypt and like
me too,
Atlantis, because I believe the pyramids, without a doubt, must be Atlantean. I mean, they try and date it 4,500. Dude, the ancient Egyptians could not build this, not unless they were way more advanced than we thought. So it must be some kind of Atlantean stuff, and I feel very drawn to some kind of primordial, divine harmony that once was upon Earth.
There is a resonance there that has been calling me since I was a child, bro. And I used to live in a very humble area of Auckland called Mangere. And I lived there up until I was 9. And up until I left that place, I was dreaming. I used to have these reoccurring dreams that terrified me back then, but blow my mind when I think about them now. I knew that I was being prepared for something. I didn't know what the hell it was. But from maybe 5 or 6 years old, I used to dream that I'd be descending into this, what felt like an underground kind of cave or maze or dungeon. And I would hear the growling of some creature. And I knew that creature was there to kill me. And it was almost like I was like I was a gladiator being pitted against a monster.
Minotaur.
And and no doubt that's what it would have been, that archetypal experience. And I just remember this bull, I just remember it being a bull with red eyes, and it would chase me and it would kill me. And it would happen again and again, night after night.
It was a bull?
Yes.
I just said the Minotaur before you said it.
Giant red bull.
I said Minotaur before you said it.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the mythology now, but back then I had no concept of it. I was just like a giant cow with horns and red eyes, and it would chase me, and I could hear it snarling, and I was terrified. And eventually, like after maybe months or even years of this happening, eventually I'm like, you know what? There's nowhere to fucking run other than at it. And so I just imagined myself as having horns, put my head down and just ran at it head first. And when I did that, it exploded into love hearts, and I never had that dream again. And maybe this was all the video games that I was playing as a kid. That was inspiring this sort of stuff. But I'll never forget that, and even to this day, I'll have dreams where I'm presented with challenges where I know all I have to do is run at it head first to be like, I'll play your game. Yeah, you know what I mean? And furthermore, like the Egyptian thing, one of the first like reoccurring dream experiences that I had was, as I'd lay down going to sleep, I'd start seeing this kind of light flicker, like an internal light, which I would believe to be like my third eye or whatever activating now. Back then, to me, I was a kid, it was just like a light that would shine. And if I'd center my attention on this light as I was going to sleep, it would get loud, like it would start ringing with the sound, and it would get brighter, right? And after a few times of having this dream, I was able to kind of steady my excitement and my fear and go into the light. When I went into it, I'm like underground in a pyramid, like lying in a sarcophagus, surrounded with hieroglyphics. Like, again, as a kid, no idea what I'm experiencing. Colors all on the walls in some kind of big cast concrete box. But of course, later, 10 years later, once I start getting into spirituality and reading about, these things, I'm like, wow, was I in a tomb? Was I in an ascension chamber? Did I somehow tap into some line of code in my DNA that was recalling some past life? And, ever since those experiences that I've had as a kid, which I know seeded this kind of initiatory path that I've taken, I've just been fascinated with Egypt, fascinated with death and the dead, and anything associated to magic or mysticism, I'll dive headfirst into.
I once had a vision where I was lying on a death pyre, almost like floating down a river. And on the sides, there were like statues of gods, and they were like judging me while I was passing through like this.
Wow.
Place. And then I think I passed, because then I like ascended into the sky, and I saw the sun, like a ball of lightning. I was like, that's God. I'm looking at God. Father,
That's super cool. That sounds like that almost sounds like some kind of ascension myth through the bardos, where your spirit is weighed, and you are judged by the 7 luminaries or the 7 archons before you reach the final destination, the Father. That's cool, man. That's really out of it. It's an interesting way of your soul to depict that process, floating past statues of personified archons or planetary deities. It's really cool. That's actually that concept formulates the basis of my great work that I've been working on for the last 4 years. This game that I've been building is based on that process.
Yeah, let's before we're gonna get into the game after this. I just wanted to mention, like, because I'm headstrong, I have like 3 planets. I have like Mercury, Aries, everything like headstrong.
Mm.
I think I figured it out earlier that if I run away from creatures in my like nightmare creatures and nightmares,
Mm.
I just get even more afraid. Even it just gets worse. So even
Definitely.
as a child, maybe 5, 6, that age, I just like let's fucking go, and I just attack them. And I mean, nothing happens. I just wake up, but it seems to it ends the nightmare at least.
I completely agree, and it enhances the experience in real life too. Like a while ago, I was preaching to people about cold showers and how powerful they are, and I think it's purely just the willingness to confront discomfort. But it's like the longer you hover your hand over that cold shower, the longer you hesitate, the more discomforting it is. If you just go straight in there and turn it on, oh, yeah, I can do this, yeah, you're good. But the longer you hesitate, the more you fear, the more you run away from it, the more unpleasant it is, because you're building your own psychological resistance, right? Which ends up having and taking on a physical effect in your body.
For sure.
It's the same like, as above, so below.
It's like monks where they like put them in freezing temperature and they throw a towel over them, cold towel, and start steaming, which is pretty interesting. Power of the mind.
Yeah, man.
But,
yeah.
You're a game developer. You're developing a game. Talk about it.
Yeah, so it's pretty unique. It's as I said, it's based on Hermetic cosmology. It's kind of like a modern reimagining of a bunch of Ascension traditions that I've explored throughout my life, namely Hindu in origin and Hermetic in origin. When I say Hindu, I mean the entire gamut of Hinduism, you know, like going through Buddhism, Krishna consciousness, all sorts of stuff, and then kind of using a Hermetic framework to modernize the mythology for the game. On the surface, it's just a speed-running escape room action platformer. So it's got a certain market appeal. It's been marketed towards men that like suffering. It's called a mesocore game, which is also known as a rage game because it's frustrating, it's extremely challenging, but fair in a fair way. But it demands your attention. It demands you to stay fully conscious, or you will just drive yourself crazy. And it's designed to do that. It's
I think people are going to learn a lot because they're so focused. All the
that's the intention, is that the lore and the kind of alchemical initiation that it represents is being transmitted orally, right? Like all of the ancient traditions, they were all transmitted orally. And the remarkable thing about video games or games generally is they occupy your attention and put you into unconscious states of play very quickly, which is a very, very receptible state of consciousness for taking on subliminal or subconscious programming. So you can learn without paying too much attention, but you will get very annoyed with it if you're not paying attention. So it kind of demands you to cultivate optimized habits and avoid unconscious, unoptimized habits. And in the meantime, it's giving you a kind of modern syncretic account of ancient alchemical and mystical traditions kind of packaged into something that can be microdosed in oral fragments. So it's there's nothing out there like it as far as I'm aware. In terms of both kind of gameplay and lore. But it's fully inspired by the Hermetic tradition. And I've just taken I've distilled everything that I've kind of learned throughout my life, throughout my military training, and kind of created a product that is both extremely exhilarating, extremely frustrating if you're not, but extremely rewarding because of the opportunity to overcome some of the bodily pains that you will experience while playing.
What's the release date for the game, and what's the name, and where can people buy it?
Yeah, sure. So the name of the game is Ascension, the Immortal Alchemist. Probably better off looking for the Immortal Alchemist because there's a million different games called Ascension. But it will be available on Steam within the next week. It's going into early access on Steam, which is the largest PC distributor on the globe or on the world.
Gabe the Babe.
By probably March next year, it'll be available on consoles, hopefully on PlayStation and Xbox. We've got a contract with PlayStation to distribute on the PlayStation Store, but we do need to do a little bit of work to get it optimized for their hardware. But it is an extremely smooth running and a very unique experience, which again is extremely challenging. And unless you're a bit of a sadomasochist and recognize the growth that comes from struggle, you'll probably find it more annoying than anything. But it has been designed for people that, kind of enjoy the Souls series and things that are very challenging, but also mystically inspired.
I think I'm going to put a trailer somewhere in here too.
Awesome, man. Yeah. Awesome.
Do you want to, like, I don't know if you can do that, how it works. You want to do like a referral link with like a 5% discount or something? I can.
At the moment, there's not really, because we're launching on Steam. There's not really a way for me to do that. But we're offering. What I will do is, like, if there's any means for me, we'll have to investigate this. If there is a means for me to do that and actually track the referrals that come from you, of course, man, we'll give you 15%. Like if anyone being referred to us through you, if we can get some kind of validation from the referral, then of course, man.
I'm not talking about me making money. I'm just like do a discount for the people listening.
I mean, everybody knowing this, like it's going to be a $20 product. Basically, so it's entering into early access, which means we want to get as much people giving us feedback on board to make it the best thing it can possibly be. So it's already available for a discount. But if you name drop this, man, we can sort something out for sure.
Great. And I think Steam already has like a great refund policy. So just go buy the game. And if you don't like it, then
they do. If it annoys the hell out of you and you don't think you can overcome the challenge, then by all means you can get your money back. But we will make that a warning up front, because it is supposed to be a challenge. And if it wasn't, it's all about transformation, right? And if it's frustrating you, it's because you're approaching it wrong. You're approaching it incorrectly, and we want the internal metrics or the internal validators of your emotional system to be that reminder, to be like, hey, you're doing it wrong. If you're getting angry, you might need to take a few deep breaths.
So it's a game combined with breathwork, basically.
Very much, yeah. I mean, you get constantly prompted by Hermes, who is the Immortal Alchemist. He's the spiritual guide in the game, who will give you prompts when, like when you're dying too often, you'll start getting calm down, relax, and slow your steps, deepen your breaths and slow your steps. So it's full of mantra, like there's no game out there that I'm aware of that will load you with empowerment like this game will, if you let it.
It is half a second to midnight and your sands are running dry. You are here to have your capacities tested, your thresholds measured, and your best self bested. Your heart will be weighed against a feather, judgment from the seven together, on whether to sever the final tether. Succeed or fail in this untimely endeavor, there will be no surrender, man's fate sealed forever.
Fantastic. Hey, I don't know anybody who's read the Corpus Hermeticum as much as you. How many times have you read it?
Well, again, like I'm more about the oral tradition, right? So I've listened to it hundreds of times, and I did so when I started making this game, I was listening to it constantly because I wanted the spirit of Hermes, or what I have learned to discern as the spirit of Hermes, to be prevalent throughout all aspects of it. So, the Hermetic principles, which obviously are modernized, I've drawn their roots from the corpus, and I'll use that old language to transmit the teachings. Some of it's been modernized for ease of receptivity. But yeah, so I've listened to the corpus hundreds of times, particularly the Asclepius and the Pymander, hundreds of times.
I think it was you who told me that, actually, like, the Corpus American was like written by like Christians. A lot of the stuff. I mean, the Corpus American is a lot of different books, so you can't say that, broadly speaking, but
I think it seems pretty evident that early Christian scholars have made an attempt to make it more synonymous with the canon of the time, and you can see relations in the creation myth. I guess they had an issue with pagan seers for seeing the coming of Christ as clearly as articulated in the divine Pymander, when he has the vision of creation and the divine logos rising out of a gloomy darkness, he calls it.
The coming of the Logos and the Good Shepherd? Huh.
Yeah, correct. The man shepherd, the shepherd of men, Poimandres. Yeah, it seems interesting. I mean, I find it quite difficult not seeing, and I guess it's because of the sequence of transmission for me. My spiritual journey kind of went. I was born in an atheist family. I got into Buddhism. I got into Buddhism first, and then Hinduism, and then Hermeticism, and then was interested in Gnosticism, and that led me to having a really solid interest in all of the Abrahamic faiths. So then I went Christianity, and now I'm looking at the Quran, because they all seem like they've come from Abrahamic sources to me. And so having gone through it that way, reading the Bible just sounds like reconstituted paganism to me, like with a fear of lost strategy built in.
Paganism, it wasn't even a thing back then. Paganism just means like the religion of the people or something. So paganism is, the ancient Israelites were henotheistic, meaning they had one main god, top god, El Elyon,
and multiple, multiple deities.
So the modern church would have called the origin of their own religion pagan or heretics. So you see how much the story has been twisted over the ages. Christianity is not the followers of Christ. Christianity is church authority, like especially Catholicism, the universal church. It's Christianity. It's the Christianity. It's just a control structure to fit them. Like, it wasn't that guy who had the P and the X, and he converted from Roman paganism to Christianity because he saw cross in addition and stuff. It's all just
I think. I still see a lot of value in the doctrine if it's read through the lens of alchemical symbolism. But I think if you're reading the Christian Bible with a kind of literal interpretation, you're really just getting a control system and some kind of limitation programming. Like that's my interpretation. If you read it through the lens of an alchemist, however, and you understand all this, like you say, celestial solar symbolism, you get something completely different. It becomes an empowerment doctrine where you're kind of in the process of becoming your own sub-deity, and the idea is to reunite with the Father by becoming like him, or as much like him as you can. And I think Christ is a great example of that process. However, I do think there's a lot of, shall we say, neutering to Christ's, what I would perceive as Christ's original message, to make sure that it can remain a kind of imperial growth system, funneling power and influence in a particular direction as opposed to freely distributing that power among the people.
Yeah, well, that's what Gnosticism is about. It's personal knowledge of God, gnosis. Whereas the church you need to go through an authority to.
Yes, correct. And I think that we're all going through authorities, but I think the authority can be found and discovered within the self without a mediator, without someone interpreting it for you, because I think there is no better interpreter than the lens of your own experience in life. You know, like you can hear something a million times from a pastor, just like a child could hear something 1,000 times from their father and still go against the word if they haven't seen it through action. You know, like I've got 2 little boys and a little girl. They're all growing up, and it doesn't matter how much I say stuff. It's what they see me do, right? It's how they see what I. Correct. You know, like, and for me, the most validating experiences and the most believable and the most easily onboarding experience into my faith is things I've seen play out, like the word I see play out in my life, you know. Just hearing it from a guy that's dressed up in a robe and is saying, oh, so what that means is this means nothing to me. You know, like when I'm sitting, because I'll go to church from time to time and I'll listen to what they've got to say, and I'll have my own resonant experience. They'll quote a passage and I'll have my own experience and be like, oh man, I see how that relates to my life. And then they'll say, so what that means is, and then they'll go off on this tangent and completely take my unique experience and my unique relationship with the word away. You know, and for me, that's disempowering. It's like, I don't really care about how it relates to your life there, mate. Like, I'm interested in how that word resonates with mine and everything I've seen. And for me, that was the main message of the Buddha, is like, go out, pay attention, and all will be revealed, right? Like, all can be revealed by you just sitting in the wilderness and paying attention, right? So, yeah,
I heard somebody say that to me, like, forget everything you ever heard, everything you read, anything everybody told you. Go sit out in the woods alone and
listen.
Let it speak. Let it speak.
Hard out. Yeah, hard out. I agree. I couldn't agree more with that. And I think the Buddha would be would be happy to hear that too.
But the Bible has, I wouldn't say the Bible is wrong, but the Bible has been altered. They've added passages. They've added passages about the Trinity that wasn't in the original text. The whole Trinity, by the way, no mention before the 3rd century. It wasn't a thing. I mean, you had the 3, Holy Spirit and Father, but there weren't the Trinity, that kind of like one being, kind of mumbo-jumbo. And nobody can even explain the Trinity because it's so paradoxical and confusing. Makes no sense. It's just, I'm over that Trinity stuff. And they added the book of Colossians, which is against Gnosticism. At the same time that Irenaeus wrote the book against heresies, they found Colossians. That's not a coincidence. They've checked the spelling, the wording, and everything. It doesn't match up. It's a fake.
It does seem like it has aspects of kind of a sales pitch becoming more and more refined, or a retention strategy, you know, like a marketing strategy that's kind of undergone growth to maximize on converts. I did like 10, 15 years in sales. You know, I did debt collection for a while, which was a very unique form of sales, and real estate as well, and sold gym memberships. And so having played with, you know, the kind of psychology of retention and the psychology of sales, there's more sales tactics in the Bible than any other mythical tradition that I've explored, you know, which for me raises a few red flags. And I don't see the Bible as wrong in any way, like whether it's been corrupted by kings, councils, and authorities or not. I see it as layered. I see it as, you know, there is one means of interpretation where you get this radical empowerment tradition, and then there's one means of interpretation where you get a radical control system, you know, like or an imperial empire building system. And I think that back in those times, I think people were probably a little bit more literate than what mainstream historians like to make out. I mean, my 5-year-old can read books just from, you know, us reading to him every night before bed, like I don't see why a 30-year-old peasant couldn't eventually learn to read. That in my mind seems ridiculous. But what is clear is that there would have been this particular alchemical language, the symbolic language, which may have been known as a higher education to the likes of scribes, priests, and the kingly class, right, or the noble class, let's say, which teaches them how to separate the pure from the impure, right, or which how to find the empowerment doctrine by reading between the lines, or by interpreting the literal differently, right? Well, where meanwhile the slave class, right, who they will still want to pit against each other, are reading the literal interpretation, which is really quite void of empowerment and is just limitation philosophy in my mind. And there's nothing wrong with limitation. It's just that when it's preventing you from exploring areas of yourself that empower you and make you more productive, that seems in my mind questionable.
I think it's without a doubt that the Bible is an alchemical book, astrotheological too, because Jesus says, like, when should we expect you back? Enter the city, and when you see a man carrying a jar of water, follow him into the house that he enters.
Yeah, it's definitely talking about Aquarius, change of age. Yeah. And yeah. Well, I mean, some people will argue against that, I think. For me, like, it's just a solar cult, like I see, or not just a solar cult, but if you want to simplify it down to its bare roots, it's a solar worship cult, like Christ is the sun. He is the light of the world. He takes away your sins. He's the reason things rise in the morning, or rise again after death, right? Like takes people out of the underworld, right? Which is sleep. It could be considered sleep. Every time you go to sleep, where are you descending? Where is your spirit going? You can descend into Hades. You can ascend into heaven. Depends on where your mind's at. Like he turns water into wine. Yeah, like without sunlight, the vine cannot grow without water. Like there's heaps of allegories that I think make it quite clear that Christ is a solar deity. But not only that, like there's clearly like a micro and macrocosmic relationship to the symbolism, because I'm sure the sun will represent a gland in your brain, the land of milk and honey could be referring to the excretions that we have from the pituitary and the pineal gland. When those excretions descend through your cerebral spinal fluid and sit at the base of the spine, they ripen for 3 days and then ascend with the kundalini and you become enlightened. So there's these macrocosmical observations of the heavens, which have a relationship to this kind of biogenesis that can happen in the body. And I think to be Christed, this is how I've come to understand it. To be anointed, to be Christed, has got to do with the oils or the fluids that are excreted in your brain, going through this process where it descends into your sacral chakra or into your root chakra, where it sits as crucified for 3 days. It ripens under the right conditions, providing your vibratory state is good enough, let's say, and then it will rise with the kundalini and reunite in those two glands where the sun and the moon combine, or the male and the female principles become in union. And I believe, having experienced this stuff, I believe that to be the case, like you start noticing that when you undergo these processes, your body starts healing itself a lot quicker than it usually would, fasting certainly plays a role in that too. You'll notice the small sores that you've had all over your body that have sat there for ages, they disappear overnight, So I think that ultimately it's pointing towards this relationship that we have with the solar and celestial deities that point to these internal processes that can be awakened in the body, which radically transform your body, mind, spirit complex, and is healing a part of that? I believe so, I believe, it's all throughout the biblical allegories, right? He heals the blind. Obviously the sun's going to heal the blind just by coming up. he is the light of the world, right? So yeah, I think there's a lot of power in all of those books. I wouldn't take any away from it just because it's been through the hands of, priest classes and kings and
That's
rulers.
why I always say, read the interlinear, the original, especially Dead Sea Scrolls. Oh, so good.
Yeah, I mean, probably the closer to the pure, the better. But I think that if you've got enough context and enough perspective by researching other traditions, you'll know exactly what it's pointing to. Whether it's approximate because of its corruption or alteration or not, you'll still be able to read between the lines and see what it's pointing at. And it's pointing at a set of behaviors that transforms the internal landscape of your body, mind, spirit complex, for
Solar
sure.
consciousness.
Yeah.
Can I read some of Jesus' words here?
Yeah,
I'm
please.
working on a script. So,
Yeah, brother.
Jesus answered, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father, Son, except through me. John 14:6. So you see them there as the truth and the way. That's the mediator, the logos. You also have here, the Son is the radiance of God's glory and the exact representation of his being, sustaining all things by his powerful word. You see their mediation, communication. After he had provided purification for sins, he sat down at the right hand of the majesty in heaven. Hebrews 1:3. Also, no Trinity, two different sitting down. And here, the last one, which really drives home my point. I was amazed when I found this. I was just looking at that. I am the way, the truth, and the... So he's the way. He's not the destination. He's the way there. And he says it right here. Very truly I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. John 13:16. And then I just knew I was onto something, because he said it. He's the messenger.
My favorite quote from John is that there is no man greater than John, born of a woman. It's just like, cool. I think I picked a good name. Shot mum, shot dad. Yeah, very true. And look, there's like a more kind of grounded way to interpret that too. If you think about when I say grounded, I mean of the earth rather than, solar allegories. But still, it's the same thing. What was used in navigation? The sun was always used for navigation, right? Because we knew that would always rise in one direction, right? Rise in the east and set in the west. So you always knew the way by referencing the sun, right? There's also the fear of the Father is the start of wisdom, right? If you don't fear the sun, you're gonna burn, baby. And it's really relevant. That's really relevant here. I mean, it might have been less relevant, back then in the Middle East, but here in New Zealand, God, half an hour in the sun, bro, and I look like a beetroot. So if I don't fear the sun, if I don't have respect for that cosmic power that's right there, I suffer, and not in a particularly good way. I mean, I might get a nice color to my skin, but other than that,
you should do all of it. Christ,
you're right. Yeah, be the anointed one. You're right. And then obviously the light. I mean, well, that's self-explanatory, right? So you've got the way, which is it will point the way to east. It will point the way to west. So it's a navigation tool. The truth. Well, all you need to do is spend time staring at the sun when it's in the right area of the sky, and you'll have all sorts of revelations, right? And the light, which is clearly quite obvious. It is the light of the world. Without it, we would be in darkness. And that's true even because of the moon, because I'm sure that the majority of the light that's coming from the moon is reflected from the sun, which therein lies a beautiful kind of male-female dichotomy too, because the father is injecting its seed to the moon, and the moon is illuminated just like when a woman is pregnant, right? So it's like there are all these beautiful correspondences that you can see between the nature of reality here on earth and these solar principles or these celestial principles.
Just from an archetypal level, Jesus being the way, the truth, and the logos, the light has to travel to reach us, and Jesus is the one who he's the messenger. sends the messenger for Hermes.
Yeah, if you look at photosynthesis in plants, clearly some kind of information is being transmitted, right? For things to be able to grow, for life to be able to grow, for gold to be able to precipitate. The ancient alchemists believe it was literally solidified sun rays, like sun rays that had crystallized into the material form, and it leaves gold. And moon, they believe that silver was created from moonlight, essentially. So yeah, I see where it comes from, or I can, at least within my framework, come up with a logical reasoning behind it.
I think the reason, or one of the reasons, many reasons, of course, they used gold as a symbol for eternity, because gold doesn't tarnish. I mean, you can, if you go out with a ship with copper, silver, and gold, and it sinks, and it's there for 1,000 years, the copper's gonna turn green. The silver's gonna tarnish, but the gold is gonna look exactly the same. It's pure. It's pure essence. It's core yourself.
Yeah, there's definitely something behind its value, because it's definitely not in. It's not in its incorruptibility, though, because you can break gold down pretty easily. It's a relatively soft metal, right? So it's not like it's undying and unchanging. I see what you say in terms of it's hard to influence with external conditions other than
most chemically solid.
Yeah. So there's definitely something there, and a lot of these traditions purport that metals or these noble metals influence your vibrational signature, because we're all electrical conductors, right? And if you're walking around wearing a robe adorned with jewels and diamonds, it's definitely going to change your conductivity. Whereas if you've got like a kind of lower metal, something heavier, something like lead or something, it's probably going to have its own effect too, right? So
something I found out recently, well, I guess I found out years ago, but I didn't think about it. Something interesting about just noble gases. Xenon is a noble gas. You can get high on xenon. It's like nitrous oxide.
What is xenon?
Xenon is you have like xenon lights, with the.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, xenon gas is a noble gas, and you can get high on it. Super expensive, but
I have interesting. I have a theory about that. So, in alchemy, right? Like you have mercury, sulfur, and salt, right? Which is supposed to be kind of correspondences with the mind, the spirit, and the body. And it seems clear to me that these ancient alchemists saw a relationship between spirit and air, right? Breath being the spirit of life. I also think that if you look at, for example, the Star of David, which I know is a very hot symbol at the moment because of the aforementioned geopolitical dramas that are happening around it, it represents to me the union of the male and the female, or the union of fire and water, right? And when you unify fire and water, or body and spirit, right? When you unify fire and water, you get a gas, you get a steam, right? And it's quite clear, especially if you look at kind of like the Dionysian mysteries.
Alcohol.
Exactly. That vapor, right? That vapor alters your state of consciousness, right? So I think it's quite clear. You look at like what Dionysus used to do. He used to sit above that vent in a cave on a chair and would breathe in a spirit, right? It was obviously a gas.
Right? Oracle of Delphi.
Sorry, the Oracle of Delphi. That's the one. So it was obviously breathing in a gas, right, to get this change in state of consciousness, and would go into a delirium and, like supposedly offer prophetic statements and all the rest of it. So I think that it was quite clear that there was this concept of gases being spiritual, or having some kind of spiritual effect on the body, right? And it makes sense, because breath is spirit and spirit is breath, and whatever you breathe in can have a profound effect on your state of consciousness. So I think that's definitely something that needs to be looked at in terms of like these ancient mystery cults, is that it seems to me that there was like a correspondence between spiritual state and gas and breath.
Yeah, We also have like plenty of drugs in the Bible. Cannabis is mentioned. They found traces now of cannabis on like all the Israel temples and stuff.
The burning bush.
And also, I don't know why it's called the Store of David. I've got no clue. I haven't looked into it, but it's the Seal of Solomon for me.
Great. Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, so I mean, I think they're just drawing from. I'm guessing it's come from King David, right?
Yeah, but why it's connected, I don't know. I don't know why it's connected to the store. I haven't read the story about be connected. Do you know what they called the guy who I think he invented it or like discovered nitrous? First guy who got addicted to it, by the way, went insane. He called it the air of heaven.
Interesting. Yeah, I played with that when I was a teenager and had some interesting visions and revelations. It was very, probably not very good for you. But so, I mean, look, you can basically hold your breath and have a vision, right? If you deprive the brain of oxygen, you're definitely going to trip out for sure.
Yeah, I mean, they give it to women who like in labor
and
give
pregnancy.
It to the dentist. It's pretty harmless. The only thing about it is it uses up all the B12 in your body. So you keep abusing it, you run out of B12, and then it starts hitting your nerves, and you start shaking, and you're fucked for life.
Yeah, that doesn't sound good.
But that's just because you don't take B12. Alcohol also removes your B12. That's why people start shaking and stuff because of the B12.
I've had an on and off relationship with cannabis for quite a long time, and it was I've been about 3 months cold turkey sober now. I go through cycles really. When I have to be hyper productive, I come off it, but when I need inspiration, I'll use it. But it was probably the catalyst for me becoming interested in Buddhism and going so deeply into it. As I said, I was born in a fully atheist family. My mum was into astronomy and, studied the stars, but in a very using very scientific methods, and had no interest in the spiritual or the divine. But cannabis made me have visions that were so clearly from outside of me. It's like this has got nothing to do with anything I've ever experienced in this lifetime. So whether it allowed me to tap into previous lives or just gave me information from outside, like I was definitely doing that. And it led me towards becoming obsessed with spirit and spirituality. Again, something you're inhaling, right, has led me towards this kind of spiritual conquest. And in Hinduism, it's known as a plant that holds a spirit, that is kind of mercurial in nature, that will act as a kind of mediator between man and the heavens. So, yeah, it depends on the tradition as to whether it's demonized or whether it's something that can be used as a tool.
I like in Hinduism, they actually like Datura is a sacred plant in Hinduism.
Oh man, blind.
And that's some scary shit, man.
Yeah, I wouldn't play with that.
Nah. Not unless you want to die a horrible, painful death.
I will just avoid the blindness that is a potential side effect if you have too much.
Yeah, not good.
Yeah.
Anyways, what do you think about psi abilities? Like we have now like Cynetics or whatever, they're talking about these like David Grush and all these whistleblowers. Also in the California Red Hot Chili Peppers, psychic spies from China trying to steal my mind's elation. That's actually about psychic spy programming.
I would say it's an ability that's probably quite rare, and that's probably by design. I'd say that there's probably technology that's everywhere that's preventing people access to it. But it's undoubtedly a thing. Why would the CIA spend so much money and so much time investing those kind of phenomena if there was nothing there? Again, I've had experiences with people that clearly could see things that were not there, and whether that was just psychosis or something else is hard to explain. But I've got no reason to doubt that that's a thing. Like when I was a teenager and experimenting with cannabis, I'd have what I believe were premonitions all the time. You know, I'd kind of see a glimpse of a future version of me and be like, oh, I want to be that guy, you know, like, oh, I'll try that. Or I would see, I'd just get little bits of information that seems like they were being pulled from parallel realities that were about to manifest in this reality, you know? So I'd say it's definitely a thing. I'd say some people have clearly got some kind of proclivity, natural proclivity to being able to tap into it, and other people just don't, you know? And I think that it all comes down to what you practice and what you train and what you believe. I would have been maybe 19. I had this group of friends who were all musicians, and by virtue of their trade, cannabis was like a big part of it. And so I'd go around there, we'd hang out in the garage and we'd just, you know, smoke weed and talk shit, really. But they'd play music and I'd sing. And there was this one occasion where it was quite different, and I had some kind of weird spiritual connection with this dog. They had this little beagle. And it would always come to me and look at me in times where I was like having revelation, and it would wink at me, and it used to freak me the fuck out, because it was always when I was like locked into these revelations, it would come up, like get my attention and then wink at me and run off. And I'd be like, what the fuck is that? But there was this one occasion, bro, we were in the garage. We were all, you know, baked out of our minds. And I got this real strong sense of deja vu. And it was very common for me during this time, like, you know, formative year, 18, 19, 20 sort of years old. And I immediately wanted to test it. I was like, oh my God, I can see like 6 or 7 seconds into the future. I need to test this. So I was like, Shane, grab a pen and paper and write a number down on it right now. Cause I already knew what number he was going to write down. I didn't know why, but I knew he was going to write 2. And so I was like, write it down. It can be between 1 and 10 billion. It doesn't matter. Just write it down. And so he writes this down on a bit of paper. And I was like, it's 2. I already know it's 2. And he opens and it's 2, right? Like, and I'm just like, I knew it. And that the next day, like we crashed out shortly after that, because it was quite exciting for me. I think they just thought, oh, you know, like Shane and John planned that. It's all bullshit. I woke up the next day in the morning, and I look at the clock, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to be late for work, because it's 11 o'clock on the clock, right? And I'm thinking, fuck, I'm late. I was due to start at 9. How did I sleep in this long? Like, what's going on? And then I look at the clock again.
By 2 hours.
And I realized that it had stopped at 11:11:11. Right, like 11, the 11th hour, and this was probably around about the time that I had that experience the night before, and so I was just like, "What the fuck?" You know, like my mind was blown, because it stopped on 11. It was like 11 minutes after 11, and even the second hand was on 11. You know, like on like just after the 10. So I was after the 2. So I was like, "What the." If
that clock had eyes, it would have winked at you.
Dude, it would have winked at me, you know, just like the dog did right before this thing happened. So yeah, I think there's something kind of special about that number, which is why I'm gutted I didn't release my game on 11/11 like I had planned to this year. But you know, unexpected things arise, and the Lord has a plan, so everything in good time. But there's something magical about that number. And you'll notice that when people are on the cusp of a spiritual awakening, they start seeing numbers chained together like that. You know, 11:11, 111, 222. But definitely something about 11:11. And I actually think that Matthew 11:11 has a little hint to the fact that the seed of Sophia is hiding within all of us, waiting to awaken under the right conditions. You know, like there's look up that passage, bro, in your own time, and anyone watching, and see if you can see what I see.
What passage?
Matthew 11:11.
Matthew 11:11.
What's the concept of you've got kind of so in manifestation, there's like this, and same with in alchemy, like there's kind of this part of the process where you declare it finished, right? You declare the work's finished, and you have to let go of it. And it's the same with sigil magic. You know, you create a sigil, you imbue it with intent, you write a statement of intent, you meditate on it, you charge it through whatever process you want, and then you kind of let it go, right? And it's when you surrender to the will God or the universe or the creative principle by letting go and being like, hey, you determine how it comes to pass. I've put the message out there, you make it happen, which seems to be when it actually starts happening, right? So, and an aspect of that, I think, is like deactivating the conscious mind, right? Like being like, right, I'm no longer allowed to think about how it's going to come to pass because that's going to prevent it and conflict with the divine will, so to speak, right? So it's like you use the masculine principle of forced act, right? Like or the conscious mind to imprint the idea, but then you use the feminine aspect, which is this kind of absorbing process akin to the unconscious, right? Where the seed's been planted, he can bugger off and let the thing happen now, and I think that there's a big part of that, right, where the conscious mind is just getting in the way, right? And that's why, again, meditation is such a powerful tool, because it will let you know when your conscious mind is interceding with your unconscious. I actually think that that's got something to do with the left hand, don't let the left hand know what the right hand is doing, is talking about too. It's like there's this relationship between the unconscious and the conscious, that need to be, they need to work in their own power at their own time, and the logical brain will constantly sabotage the creative brain. Like you'll come up with this profound idea, let's say some inspiring idea that's like going to carry you forward. And then the logical mind will come in and be like, oh, but that's not even real. Nah, fuck that. Don't worry about it. And then all of a sudden, what could have been some creative spark that could carry you and propel you forward just gets undermined by the delta,
it's an esoteric lore or alchemical lore. I'm not sure where it's from, but it's called, they say the little king must leave the throne for the greater king to take his place.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. Yeah, it sounds like the conscious and the unconscious, right? Mm.
Have you listened to Joe Rogan's episode with Kai Dickens, or listened to the telepathy tapes?
I've heard about them. I understand the pretext as basically autism or like those types of traits are actually, they're disguising some kind of telepathic power, the ability to read minds or read frequency or something.
The thing is that they're pretty much stuck in their bodies, but their body doesn't function, so they're not very much connected to the body. So they're more connected to the mind and the soul, and that disability allows them to focus more on the soul. And it's not just telepathy. If you listen to it, it's about they have like this like this realm of stuff, and they can read Sumerian, like every language on Earth. It's some crazy stuff, and this is becoming scientifically proven.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that the mind is obviously an extremely powerful instrument, and it definitely comes down to how you've tuned it, right? And like what you've spent your time tuning into. And again, some people have natural proclivities towards tuning into certain things than others. Whether that's some kind of soul trait, or, evolution between lifetimes, who knows? I don't know. I've got mixed feelings about that because, I don't like the idea of people going out and vaccinating their children, hoping that they'll get autism so they can like predict the future. I'm not saying that vaccines cause autism, but there's definitely a large cohort of people that believe that they do, and so making that a popular opinion, I think, would be extremely beneficial for the pharmaceutical industry. But
I don't think people are going to go out and make their children physically disabled.
I reckon you'd be surprised, bro. If you've ever been to India, there's a sprawling trade of people that literally deform their children so they can financially benefit. So I definitely think there would be a large cohort of people that would be like, this is an interesting opportunity to explore extrasensory perception.
People are going to do crazy shit either way,
Yeah, that's
true. I don't
true.
think most people are going to do that. Like make their children.
I would hope not. And I'm sure.
What kind of parent would you be? Like, how guilty would you feel? Your child is now non-verbal autist. Like,
this is my point though. Because it's painting that, and I'm not saying that it's a negative thing by any means, but it's like it's putting it up on a throne where it's like this should be a desired outcome, right? Like this should be great. You should be happy. You should celebrate. And I'm just saying that is the case. But promoting it in a way where it's like, oh, your kid's actually like a low-key superhero, with extrasensory powers. I think that is there. I think there's some danger in that, whether it's true or not.
Yeah. Anyways, I'm not sure we have the time to talk about Saint Germain because my headset is dying. One earbud now, so that's I think fine. We're gonna wrap this up now.
Cool, brother.
It's been great having you on, but I need you to tell people where they can find you.
Right. So the best place to go would be violetflamestudios.co.nz, which is our the website for kind of my grand division. You can find me on Facebook, John McCormick. You can we have a YouTube channel. Best place to go would be violetflamestudios.co.nz. That's www.violetflamestudios with an S on the end, .co.nz. And at the top of that page, you'll find the links to all the platforms that we're on, both me personally and me as kind of an entity trying to spread the message and the wisdom of the great sages that have come before us and laid the foundations for us to stand on. So that's a good starting point.
Hey, I usually ask people to write a word or a comment if they made it this far. Like last time I had Starburster. So give me your word or phrase, and if you made it this far, then write it.
Are you talking? You want me to say something, or are you talking?
Yeah. Come up with a phrase or just a word, so people can write it in the comments. So I know they made it.
Glory to the master.
Glory to the master. Write that in the comments below, so I know you made it this far. And I will see you mortals next time. Bye.
Thank you, brother. See yous.
Hermes strikes great, the master of mysteries, the keeper of fate. From ancient realms your knowledge unfurled, inscribed on emerald, you've hidden your pearls. Oh, thought with your magic pen, unveil the secrets only known to few men. Inscribe our hearts with cosmic light and guide us through the dark of the night. Oh, so bridging realms unseen, granting us wisdom in the spaces between, guiding our thoughts, igniting the flame, and inspiring us through this chemical game. Oh, so the revealer of Savior, Lord.